Okay, so this is a video tutorial which will step you through creating a simple Android app where you click on a button and that button responds to your click by populating random numbers into 3 text fields below the button in the app. Okay, so we start by creating our new project. The first thing we do is give our project a name, so we call it number generator. Given the company domain android.cit.ie, so that gives us this package name, which is fine. Package choice is up to yourself. Minimum SDK, again, is up to yourself, but I'm going to go with Android 4.3. And add no activity, because we're going to write the activity completely from scratch ourselves. So once your project is complete setting up, which can take a minute or two, you're in the Android Studio environment. So the first thing to do is click on the project tab on the left hand side, go down into our app and into the Java directory. So the first thing we're going to do here is create the Java file for our one and only activity in this app. So we right click on this directory, do new Java class, and let's call it number generator activity. So to make this an Android activity, all we do is make this class extend activity. And we can see there in the drop down that that's in the package android.app. And the import goes in up above here, import android.app.activity. Now the one thing to note about Android activities is you don't instantiate them yourself, they are instantiated by the Android platform. However, we can intervene at different life cycle points of the activity, and the one we want to intervene at usually is the onCreate, so when this activity is created first. So what we can do is go up to the code menu here, do override methods. So this is the method that we're overriding from the superclass activity. So lots of them there, but this is the one we want. So onCreate with one bundle as its argument. Okay, so we get the onCreate method there. Don't worry about the bundle information there for the moment, that's not important for this app. Okay, so we'll save that. The next thing we want to do is to create a GUI layout file, which is the partner file of this activity. And it will define the layout and the components used within the GUI of this activity. So what we do, the layout files exist in a layout directory of resources. So we go down to our res directory, do new, right click and do new Android resource directory. Directory name is going to be layout, and resource type is going to be layout. Okay, so to refresh this directory is just a small bug in Android Studio. Just collapse it and open it again. So So in our layout directory here, we want to do new, again right clicking on the directory, and new layout resource file. And by convention, we name these resource files in the reverse of what we called our activity. So we called our activity number generator activity .java, so its corresponding XML layout file is going to be activity underscore number generator. For the moment, we're going to go with relative layout and click OK. Okay, so this starts initializing the Gui Designer for us. And we can see the little phone representation rendering there. And we can flick here between the design and the text tabs down the bottom. So if we go over to the text tab, we can see the XML that's already been generated for us. Okay, so relative layout, and as we drag components into our activity using the designer, more XML will get generated here. So for the moment, if we don't want to, we don't have to manually edit this XML. So let's get started and let's drag a button on. So you can see the layout parameters change as you drag around the place. So center horizontal centers your button on the horizontal axis. Align parent top means that the button is laid out relative to the top of its parent, the parent container, which is the activity. And you can see there, if you can increase the margin that it keeps between itself and the edge of the parent if you wish. Okay, so no margin, and then you drag and the margin gets bigger. So let's just drop it there. So the button is highlighted there in the designer. If we want to change properties of the button, we can come over here to the right hand side. So let's change the text on this button to generate. So we go down to the text attribute and we change that to generate. Okay, so below that button we want to put in 3 text fields. So let's scroll down here a little bit. A plain text field is fine. Again, you're going to see similar layout parameters. So it's centered on the horizontal and it's below the button, so it's relative to the button with a margin of 40 pixels. So we drop that there. We can now drop a second one, which will be below the first one. So we have our 3 text fields there. Now, an important point to note up here in the top right is that every component that you drop into the designer automatically gets an ID, and these are the IDs here. So the button gets the ID button, and the 3 text fields get edit text 2, and edit text 3. There's nothing stopping you giving them more meaningful names. So we could highlight button here. So as long as the IDs are unique, that's fine. So we could change that to generate button. Click yes here. Edit text, we could change to number 1. The next one, change it to number 2. Third one, number 3. So that they are IDs which are more meaningful to us as the person programming this app. Okay, so if we have a quick look there in the XML, we'll see that more XML has been generated, and you'll see some of the properties there that you saw popping up in the designer put in as attributes of the XML. You'll also see the IDs there in the Android ID field. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is link our Java activity with our XML GUI layout. So we want to load the XML GUI using the Java code in our activity. So the way we do that is by using a method, again, which is inherited from activity. So it's called set content view. And what we do here is we give the ID of the layout file within the resources. So you use R, capital R, to access all resources within your Java or within your Android project. The next thing is we're accessing the layout section of our resources, and within that there should be activity underscore number generator, and there is. So that points us at the XML file, and that's all we have to do to load the GUI into our activity. All the rest of the work in terms of creating those components and instantiating them is done by the Android platform. The next thing we have to do is go to our manifest file, which is the glue which holds the entire app together. So in here we have to mention all activities. Now we only have one activity here, so it is the default activity, which means it's the activity that gets launched when the app is invoked or launched. So we'll see here our manifest already has some information. So it has what we're concerned about here is the open and close application. So within that we want to put in an entry for our activity, which is this, and within Android name here what we put in is the full path to our Java class. So it's IE dot CIT, and you can see it auto completes there. So our number generator activity, and save that. So if we have a look below that here, we have it set up as the main activity. So this will get launched when the app is initially started. Now if we go back to our Java class, what we want to do now, we have our GUI set up, but we want the button to respond to clicks. So first what we have to do, and this is only for click events, we write a public method void, let's call it respond to click. Now every Android GUI component ultimately extends from android.view.view, so the view class, in the same way that all Swing components ultimately extend from JComponent. So whatever is clicked will come in here. So you can put a click event, or you can click on any GUI component, obviously. In our case it's going to be a button, but they are all ultimately a view. They all extend from view, so you can say a button is a view if you were clicking on a text field or a label or a radio button. They all also extend view. So we're prompted there for Alt and Enter to import view up above, so we can see that there. Okay, so the important thing here is public void. The method name is your choice, and it must take a view argument. So to link that to our button, we now go back to the designer, highlight the button, and what we're looking for here is the on-click property. There it is. And if we go in there, we should see our method appearing there, and we do. Okay, so that now means that when that button is clicked, it will go to our respond to click method in our activity, and the parameter which is passed in here, this view, is actually the button which was clicked. Or if we set up the on click on another component, it would be that component. So when this click happens, what we want to do is, first of all, generate some random numbers. Okay, so we are going to create a new class, which is basically our controller class for this app. So it's just plain Java. This has nothing to do with Android. So we call it random number generator. And what I'm going to do here is just put a simple static method which creates an array list and populates it with random numbers. You can specify the amount of random numbers that you want by the int argument that you pass in at the top. Okay, so we won't go through this in detail because this is just standard Java. Okay, so create our array list, have a for loop for the amount of numbers we want to create a random number, wrap it in an integer object, and put that into the array list, and finally return the array list after the for loop. So this is a static method, so we can call it directly, so just for simplicity for this little app. So if we go back to our number generator activity, here we can call random number generator dot generate random numbers, and in this case we want 3 of them, and that will return us an array list of type integer. We call it random numbers, and Alt and Enter there again to import array list up above. So the final thing we need to do in this app is actually put those numbers into the text fields. So how do we get reference to the text fields? Seeing as we didn't create them directly, they were created in response to us passing the XML file to the setContentView method. The way we do it is there's a method on activity called find view by ID. Remember, every GUI component in Android is ultimately a view, and what you do is pass in the ID. So it's R again for our resources, .id for the IDs of things, and there are our 3 fields. So number 1, number 2, and number 3. Now this method here returns something of type view, but we know that it is an edit text. If we look at our XML, these are the types of the components here. So edit text is your basic text field. So we know it's going to be type edit text. So let's call that text 1. And we have to cast that to an edit text. So we know that the view that's being returned here is in fact an edit text. our Alt and Enter. So the same for the subsequent two edit texts, obviously. So that means we now have a reference to those three text components. So these three edit texts, it's like having reference to a JText field in Swing. And just like in Swing, on each of these there is a set text method. So what we want to do is take each of the random numbers from above. So we'll take random numbers get 0. Now we must make sure that we convert that to string representation. And the same for the second two. So we're getting item 1 out of the array list of randoms. Save that. So if you then click play up the top here, you get this dialog up. And presuming that you have an emulator running, which I do here, I have a Genymotion Samsung Galaxy S4. Choose the running device, click OK. I have my running device here. So that should run the app on the device, and if we unlock it here, click on generate, and we get our random numbers. Okay, you can keep clicking there, getting different random numbers. And that's the end of this tutorial.